Hello and welcome to another Wrestling Roundtable Discussion podcast. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dudley boys of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss another burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily wrestling podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views. We have interviews, more roundtable discussions like this one, and a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, with the news coming out recently that Chris Hemsworth is going to play Hulk Hogan in his biopic, I want to talk about wrestling movie moments. The best and worst wrestling movie moments. Michael Sidgwick, start us off.
Best and worst. What way round do you want me to do this?
I think we'll dip in and out of both. Right, let's start with the good to begin with.
Ooh. And that's the end of the podcast.
Right. Okay.
The wrestler. Right. Let's start with
no, the wrestler's great. The wrestler's great. Mickey Rourke delivers a powerhouse performance, and it's possibly the best casting of all time because, I mean, Mickey Rourke, I don't want to poke fun at someone's appearance because he's probably got body dysmorphia issues, hence why he's had lots and lots of plastic surgery. But the result to his face made it look like he's lived about 5 separate lifetimes, which is what a pro wrestler has because the grind is so horrific. So he's perfectly stunt cast. He researched the role brilliantly, he underwent a physical transformation to put it over. It's quite a simple tale, but brutal in its pathos, really delicately poised and balanced in its direction. And Marissa Tomei's in it, and she was a childhood teenage crush of mine as well. It's, to be less Jerry Lawler about things, it's actually a really great piece of work that doesn't, for me, demonize the pro wrestling industry, but rather just casts it in a very accurate and depressing light.
I think there's quite a good meta level to Mickey Rourke being cast as that well. There's a really great scene where him and Marissa Tomei's lap dancer are having a beer in the bar afterwards. It's the middle of the day. The bar is empty. They've got nothing better on with their time because they do their work at night in front of very small crowds that, they want to try and extract as much money as they can. And an 80s hair metal song comes on, and Mickey Rourke in particular, as his wrestler character starts dancing, he's had a drink, he's just a bit overexcited just to be having that tiny flash moment of a better life. And they're both like, oh man, the 80s was the best, the 90s sucked. And that was a very real comment on Mickey Rourke in particular, but also Marissa Tomei. She kind of reinvented herself in the 90s, having had this big breakout period in the 80s, but Mickey Rourke especially 80s heartthrob, and then what you saw in the wrestler was effectively what the 90s had done to Mickey Rourke. That was what was left of him, but as wrestling fans, we know that told the tale of so many wrestlers, countless guys that went through our head. And what I loved about that was as well, as the token wrestling fan amongst my friends, as I'm sure you guys are, and you guys are, there were few times when somebody approaching me to have the wrestling conversation were so dignified and so credible and so enjoyable as when people had been to see the wrestler and weren't coming at me asking if the Undertaker's still around and who's the champion and is that Hogan still there. It was no, wow, the wrestler's really good, wasn't it? Are there a lot of guys that go through that and then they're not really asking for an answer because they don't want you to bore the pants off them with a story about Marty Jannetty or Ric Flair or whoever. What they want to know is, does that really go on? And you could see that there was a tiny inbuilt bit of respect for the graft of what wrestlers were putting themselves through. I thought the scenes in which you saw in Blade and the scenes where you saw the bumping really put over wrestling as the craft, the one that we know, the one that we love, has only ever really been reflected in the wrestler. I can't think of a time when either a film tries to do that and just makes it seem like a complete pantomime, or worse, tries to treat it as real. And this was the first time that it got that right for me, and I don't really think it's ever happened again since. So the wrestler still stands up now. I think we're a decade on, and it still stands up now as a great piece of work.
Yeah, it's one of those movies I want to go back and watch on a regular basis, despite how it's a difficult watch in parts, isn't it, for obvious reasons. And certainly when you hear about wrestlers who've been to see it, people who've worked in the industry, especially worked during that time period that they're sort of referencing there, the emotional response that you hear, I've only really heard from other wrestlers around the Jake the Snake documentary, which is it's a rarity that you can relate to wrestlers that much. Well, like you say, it's just effectively a movie. Like the Jake the Snake thing is based, well, it's not based, it's following real life, whereas the wrestler is a fictional tale utilising and even including some wrestlers obviously in the film.
The deli counter is such a great touch as well because obviously it's there for one of the big finales where he just wants to feel the pain again because that's what kind of drives him. But the fact that he's there working at a deli counter, an ex-wrestler, that every now and then a fan's going to come in and be like, oh, I remember you. That echoes stories of Brutus Beefcake causing an anthrax scare when he worked on a New York underground ticket office, or Shane Douglas working in a Target. And I know who I am, and if I walked into a shop and saw an ex-wrestler behind the meat counter, the mark in me would be thrilled to see him. It wouldn't matter to me that he's now working on a meat counter. I just see the star that I'd once received as this larger-than-life personality, and there's such a sadness to that I think is captured so well in the wrestler.
Yeah.
Right, now that's out of the way. Some of the worst moments.
Hulk Hogan. We coming for you. Hulk Hogan is mahogany of skin and mahogany of acting performance.
There it is.
He's honestly
There it is.
the most wooden actor of all time. I've got lots of things to say about Hulk Hogan, but it's a short podcast, so I will not do it. I will just touch upon two things that, for me, bring into focus just how terrible he was as an actor, which is so strange because as a pro wrestling performer, like the magic of that he could like weave on people was just absolutely incredible. But yeah, put him behind a camera of a director, it's just hilariously bad. Right, two things. One, Lex Luger nominally replaced Hulk Hogan in 1993. Now, for me, in parallel with that, Hulk Hogan was trying to replace like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose careers were on the decline as action movies fell out of popularity. So for me, Lex Luger was the worst Hulk Hogan of wrestling. Hulk Hogan was the worst Lex Luger of action movies. It was just a really neat parallel because he just was not very good. And to, again, underscore just how terrible Hulk Hogan was at acting. What is like the worst thing a human being could do that isn't one of like the major crimes? It's probably hurt a dog. And the best moment of No Holds Barred, as became apparent years later, was when someone kicks their dog into the sea. An act of unbelievably unconscionable cruelty that in any other context you would just say that is absolutely horrible. How can you do that? I've had dogs growing up, like they're the most beautiful, loving, pure, innocent creatures. However, watching one of them get punted into the ocean in No Holds Barred is by some distance the best moment of that.
I know this has come up
awful
before,
movie.
but No Holds Barred, I can't watch No Holds Barred without thinking of that alleged story where Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan had a weekend to rewrite themselves, and they took a lot of Pro Plus to get through that weekend in the hotel room to get what we eventually got with No Holds Barred. That movie's 10 times better believing that's how it all came together, that Vince McMahon would see a script and just be so disgusted with it that he says, give me 48 hours and I'll give you Dookie.
I was literally about to say, I said, when you said, what's the worst thing a human can do? I thought you meant Dookie. I don't
In your trousers.
Just that line. Oh, goodness me. Yeah, that is... I mean, there's...
Well, it can't be kill a guy because that's the payoff to the film. That's how the babyface triumphs. Murder.
Yeah, I mean, the one saving grace in Hulk Hogan's acting career is, of course, his performance in Rocky 3. I remember him as Thunderlips, and that is a tour de force for the character.
It created Hulk Hogan in many ways, didn't it? Because he left to do that film. He left WWE to do that film. He was immediately a bigger star. It was a poor decision by Vince McMahon Sr. to not be happy with him doing that. Vern Gagne in the AWA crafted Hulkamania off the back of Thunderlips, and Vince McMahon said, I like the idea of that, and took the best of it and made what he made of it. It was a career-changing performance.
Oh man, me ball. Oh my God. It's absolutely great.
But it's not just No Holds Barred, is it, when it comes to Hulk Hogan? There's quite the catalogue.
My personal so bad it's good favourite is Suburban Commando. I'm pretty sure I went to see this at the cinema.
I know I did.
And my God, at the time, I think even at the time, like I've still got fond memories of like My Girl and The Mask and Mrs. Doubtfire and Cool Runnings, just films that I remember vividly seeing at the cinema because it's the biggest screen of all time, and telly is your favourite thing. So it's the best thing ever, times 100. So you've always got these vivid memories of the films you've
Very
watched at the
atmospheric
cinema.
going to the cinema as a
Yeah,
kid, isn't it?
absolutely. It's like an absolute massive event, the best thing ever, magnified to 100 million. And I've got all these vivid memories of Cool Runnings and Mrs. Doubtfire and all the rest of it. I know for a fact I went to see Suburban Commando. I should have an inherent nostalgic affection for that film, but I can't because it's absolutely crap. It's so bad. It's so bad. Every now and then it is a bit so bad it's good. But at the same time, it's just a cringeworthy, embarrassing watch. It is like a focus group research meeting of like what kind of things are going to appeal to like an early 90s, late 80s audience. Bang them all in that film.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan, at one point, backflips after slipping on a skateboard, and then like ends up as like the coolest skater, and it's radical and it's extreme and it's Hulk Hogan.
When Poochie's not on screen, we need to talk more about Poochie.
I know, and he's like a fish out of water. He's extreme. He's an alien. It's like, oh my God,
I quite
is terrible.
You made a reflection to the wrestling world as well, because in Dirty Dancing she carries a melon, and in Suburban Commando he squashes one. That's very Hogan, isn't it? Like, that's the big comedic moment, is that he covers this grandma in squashed melon.
It's just terrible, terrible cinema. Like, terrible.
Michael Hamlet, what's some of your best and worst wrestling movie
I'm
moments?
going to Hogan again, if it's
okay,
all right.
that's fine. It's the thing that keeps on giving.
You can't hate, and I'm going to Brutus Beefcake again. How has this happened? You can't hate that Hulk Hogan, to be fair, got a lot of his mates' jobs through a lot of the wrestling career. Plenty of people made that Hogan money and got, like, I don't mean Hulk dust in the sense that they were out there in the ring with him and they became stars. I mean, he literally just got them jobs. Brutus Beefcake shouldn't have been anywhere near the main event of a WrestleMania when Bret Hart was on the card, but there we were. WCW 1994 shouldn't have had Hacksaw Jim Duggan squashing Steve Austin. What became of him in 25 seconds? But that was what Hulk Hogan did. And the very start of Mr. Nanny, a film that couldn't be
Beefcake headlined Starrcade 94.
Yeah, there you go. Their WrestleMania had a Brutus Beefcake match on. Yeah, Mr. Nanny, a film that shouldn't have been anything to do with Hulk Hogan the wrestler, because the whole point of the premise was this big man is now going to look after kids. He's not going to be in that world anymore, but we need to have the setup of that. He's been booted out of wrestling by what? By a massive fight with these nightmarish creatures, played by Brutus Beefcake, Kamala, the one-man gang, all the lads coming in. This was about a year before. He thought, actually, this might work on television. And the Dungeon of Doom was created. What he suggested to Eric Bischoff and a multi-million-pound company was, we need to create the start of Mr. Nanny on a wrestling show. Can we get the giant out of an iceberg? I think it's going to work. That had already happened on cinema before it happened on WCW Nitro. And I just love the fact that he was this guy that I genuinely think it was a bit of a security blanket for him. You saw it in Thunder in Paradise as well. Beefcake and Jimmy Hart were his friends.
I love the setting of Thunder in Paradise. It's really nice. I mean, it's paradise. But the performance again is just...
There's a great story. Very recently, Eric Bischoff told the story of Thunder in Paradise, and Hulk Hogan at the time kind of believed he wanted to be this Hollywood star, this breakout star. And then
I'm sure he did.
After Thunder in Paradise, he genuinely had a bit of a complaint to Eric Bischoff, because he was like, brother, they wanted me there at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Like, it's a long day on set. It's not when you're Hulk Hogan in WCW. You turn up 20 minutes for call time, drop a leg, and then get shot. Like, Thunder in Paradise was the hardest he's worked in years. And for that...
Wasn't Hogan also renowned in the WWF at his peak for just like bailing on a show halfway through so you get his dinner at the hotel?
He'd always work before the intermission.
Yeah.
Like, need to get away from the ferns, bro. They're too many fans. Nah, less traffic.
What's some of your like best wrestling movie moments?
I'm not an action movie fan, but I absolutely understand why The Rock commands the money he commands for the films that he makes. I get no love for the Fast and the Furious films and whatever Vin Diesel's flexing for 2.5 hours, but The Rock, I completely understand it. I see Dwayne Johnson as that replacement for that Stallone Schwarzenegger figure that Hogan never was. Got perverse enjoyment out of watching him in the Get Shorty sequel, Be Cool, where like he really sort of he flexes comedic chops in a different way to how he was very funny as a pro wrestler, but pro wrestlers, when they try to be funny in film, are often just cringeworthy. It's jokes about how muscular they are and how that they're thick, or they kind of make an embarrassment of you enjoying wrestling. And The Rock's been the guy that whenever I'm sat watching a film, I don't feel like, a bit like what I said with the wrestler, I'm waiting for the friends or family I'm with to turn to me and be like, so does he still do that wrestling thing then? I never feel like that watching The Rock. And as a wrestling fan, there's a great satisfaction to that.
I told you this story before, didn't I? I was out with some friends for a meal, and they asked me about the job that I do, and I explained, I work for a wrestling YouTube channel, effectively. And they were running through the people that they knew.
Big Daddy?
No, this was this.
Sorry, Alan.
They were slightly too young for that. They were talking about the Undertaker.
Gift this.
The Undertaker. It was the Undertaker, John Cena, because John Cena's in movies. And I said, "Oh well, of course you must know The Rock then." And they genuinely said to me, "The Rock used to be a wrestler," and I was like, I'm too old for all of this. It's ridiculous. I want to delve for a bit of both into the WWE Studios canon, because we've got some. I mean, we've got some.
Why?
Because we've
we
spoken
nearly
about
made it
it
through
before.
a whole podcast without this.
Well, I want to talk about the Chaperone, because The three of us recently sat down, didn't watch The Chaperone because we were on a torture ourselves. We just watched the trailer, and that is enough, really, isn't
YouTube
it?
vomited up the trailer after the Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, Randy Savage
Randy
thing,
Savage.
as if that would be what we'd want to watch next.
That we should mention that. That is a really great moment, a wrestling movies moment with Randy Savage versus Spider-Man. A real
Classic.
Bonesaw is ready. But yeah, we watched the trailer for The Chaperone. And I'm going to include another one in here. Blade Trinity as well. We watched a clip of, which also featured Triple H. Triple H's acting career, questionable. I think it's fair to say. What are your memories of Triple H on the big screen?
Can we say the line from Blade Trinity? I know we can't say the worst swear words, but can I say the line?
You can say it if you want.
Hey, dickface! What happened to my dog? So there's some kind of thing with a dog where
It's
he's
more dog
upset
stuff,
about-
isn't it? Dog stuff.
More dog stuff. And he has this rubbish fight with Ryan Reynolds' character in which he doesn't do the pedigree because he's not going over. He settles on a running power slam instead. And he does the worst bit of acting of all time. He has to do the bait and switch, which for Christ's sake, Triple H, you're a wrestler. So the second thing they teach you after the chin lock is to make the audience think you're going to say one thing and then do the other.
Oh,
It's a
yeah, I know
panto,
what you're referring
but like he gets his arm broken by Ryan Reynolds in this thing and he goes, you broke my arm, and he starts crying. He goes, and it's just like, oh my God, you are like the worst. You're the worst actor of all time.
The Chaperone, and I can only go off the trailer. To my shame, I haven't seen The
No.
Chaperone. But I don't think he was the right cast for somebody that has come out of prison, because there is a man that has never faced oppression of any kind in his life. So you're asking him to be this guy that's like, I've seen some things, man. I've done some stuff. He's done nothing. He's seen nothing.
Blue
He's Triple
blood,
H.
Machiavellian,
Multi-billionaire owner.
nepotism, corporate overlord. Yeah.
Oh, my
Rubbish.
life is a prison. Oh, work.
Before we get to a couple more good wrestling moments, I do want to also reference one more WWE Studios film, and that is See No Evil. Because I can't decide whether that's the best or a worst. Because I remember I remember all of that. And I remember the way they worked it, obviously, into WWE storyline.
An eye on a 3-foot tail can't see any evil.
With what was it? May 19th was the
Yeah.
May
that's what
19th.
the
How could you forget?
building to. I'm just double checking.
I get a text off a lapsed fan friend of mine, Michael. If you're listening or watching, because I know you do, because you support me, I get a text every May 19th to say, are you watching out for Kane? You worried about Kane? Where's Kane today? That marketing worked.
Is that of Crime
really
Time
worked.
Shame fame?
It's not him, though.
Oh, right.
That would be Nick. That's for another day. That May 19th thing absolutely worked.
Yeah?
I think it stuck around.
Okay, just a bit of trivia. In case you don't know the story, okay, we're going to play a little game. How big did Vince McMahon want the character of Jacob Goodnight's penis to be in this film for reasons that I find mystifying? Right, okay, we'll play a little game. Can you see this on the table? Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it this big? The girth on that is impressive. I can only dream of such girth, but no, it's bigger than that. Was it this big?
Keep going.
This is a snake.
Is this big? No? Bigger than that? Was it this big? No? Was it this big? How big's that? Is that
What's
like
that? 2 foot, maybe?
2 foot?
Maybe.
Bigger than that. He wanted a 3-foot dick on Jacob Goodnight for reasons that I just don't understand. Like, was that his like, you know, like Freddy's like claws
Yeah.
and was that the weapon of choice? Was it just gonna like wrap it round the final girl's neck and strangle her? Like, what is Vince
He's a
thinking,
genetic
man?
jackhammer.
Why did he want him to have a 3-foot dick?
It's a good job there wasn't a sequel, because otherwise he would have just hired him in Irish clothes and he would have been the first Hornswoggle, wouldn't it?
No.
He's 3 foot.
I can't carry on for the moment. Do you want to talk about They Live? Because that was a classic.
I've got They Live written down here because John Carpenter is just awesome. His 80s output was absolutely incredible. It's far from the best. We know what the best John Carpenter 80s film was, and that is Big Trouble in Little China. I will not have any other argument to the contrary. But They Live's really good, just pulp cinema with his wonderful synth soundtracks and his like B-movie premises that he somehow made really artful. It was just great. And Roddy Piper's performance in this film is
The
absolutely
message of
sensational.
They Live holds up as well. It's pretty timeless in terms of the content.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You know, there's never been a point, I don't think, where like that kind of, I mean, I know he uses sort of like zombification and aliens for capitalism, but it exists to this day.
Yeah.
I think even there was maybe a Daniel Bryan t-shirt that used some of the iconography from the Day Live.
Yeah.
It was something that Roddy Piper should have dined out on more, in
It's
my
just a
opinion.
total cult classic. That was absolutely brilliant. Way better than his singing career, which is very stalkerish, but that's another one for another podcast. In fact, we'll do a sequel to that.
Yes.
So I want to talk about Roddy Piper's singing career. We'll do more of that. But yeah, They Live, the famous moment from that film was completely ad-libbed, where he said, I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. And for me, this is what I love about the casting, because a pro wrestler, at least back then, very much not now, was trained to have these instincts and how to ad-lib. And I was
Piper
just,
especially.
Yeah,
Red
Piper
hot
was
for that.
absolutely great at this. And I was just thinking, can you imagine if they did like a remake of They Live? And Tamina was
it'd go.
cast as the protagonist, and she was like forced to like come up with a line that was like badass and out the blue, and to get herself over. You know what the line is, don't you? Hey, Charlotte, Charlotte, if you don't start talking, I'm going to make you look like Ellsworth. But you know, facetiousness aside,
I'm here to chew gum, and I'm all out of gum.
facetiousness aside, you couldn't really remake They Live anymore with a pro wrestler in that role, because as far as I'm aware, like, I don't think any of them could do it.
None of them are over it. Just have to be called They Dead.
None of them in WWE could do it. I know, like, in essentially every single other promotion, they've got way more creative freedom over their characters, but it's a lost art, the improvised promo, even in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, Juice Robinson's great, Zack Sabre Jr. is great, you just don't get it anymore. But if you want to see like the perfect marriage for me of what makes a pro wrestler great and what makes cinema like brilliant, go and watch They Live. Go and watch They Live.
I will say this for wrestlers, just quickly as well. Whenever you listen to a wrestler talk on a podcast about an experience on film and television, they're the ones that realise that their regular weekly job is really, really hard compared to that of an actor. You'll hear someone like Chris Jericho talk about being on a set and doing a scene once, twice, maybe 3 times. They want to get different camera angles. They just want to make sure that he was happy with the take, the director's happy with the take. And he's like, what is this all I have to do? Because they're so used to having Vince McMahon panicked, running up to them, shove a script down saying, right, we're going live, 20 minutes, learn your lines, go. Like, at least for them, to be fair to the wrestlers, what we don't see on a Monday or a Tuesday is probably the stress of having to get your lines learned incredibly quickly, get something remembered, try and have a message, and then have your director come in and say, we're not selling that message anymore, we're selling something entirely different. At least when they're in a situation where the surrounds are professional, they can prove themselves compared to other actors that they actually need very little time at all to kind of get into the character, lock into what they're supposed to be doing.
I've just realised something. That bit I did about Santino Marella's Cobra, the guys on the podcast listening on Acast and iTunes and Spotify aren't going to know what I did, so I'm just going to recap what I did. I got Santino Marella's Cobra, which you've got a prop of in the studio.
I think this is like
here.
a horror film. This should have been left to their imagination to what it was exactly you were slapping on this table.
Well, it's wrestling, so I'm going to go on the nose with it. What I did, just for the benefit of the listeners and not the viewers, was I, inch by inch, got the Cobra on the desk. No wonder I've got a complex. Inch by inch on the desk, I unfolded the Cobra that belonged to Santino Marella once, and I unfolded it inch by 6 inch, another 3 inches, another 6, and it wasn't big enough to be 3 foot long, which was the size of the dick that Vince McMahon wanted Kane's character to have in See No Evil.
This podcast was deemed suitable for mature audiences only.
Any final entries in best and worst wrestling movie moments?
I'll be positive to end on a bit of a positive because it means he's going to be around the wrestling less. I think John Cena is doing better than I expected in Hollywood. Blockers looked like an awful piece of work from the trailers, and I thought he was good in it.
Blockers was great, yeah.
Excellent in Trainwreck.
In the ring.
Yeah.
You can't act in the ring.
He's not a great wrestling actor, and this is it. I think it's a genuine surprise that he's doing as well as he's doing, and I'm all for it because I'd rather he be a special guest in WWE than a full-timer. If that didn't work and we were going to get 10 more years of JBL hair Cena, I don't know if there'd be 10 more years of me watching WWE, so I'm glad it's working for him.
I know there's one more you want to mention as well.
Yeah, from 3 foot dicks to who knows what size this dick is. Dave Bautista is like really good. He doesn't do much in Blade Runner 2049, but he's got an important job to set the tone of the movie. He looks like an absolute unit, and he plays his role with a certain gravitas, and he's really good. And I've heard people like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's very off-putting by the game and in film channels in this office because their tastes, in my opinion, are terrible. So the people who recommend this film to me...
It is very good.
I have little respect for. As people are good, but, you know... So I respect you. Is Guardians of the Galaxy worth watching?
Yeah, it's fantastic, and that is arguably the real shining performance of Dave Bautista's.
So
career.
my
Remember
understand.
just the wrestling fans used to go through in the comment section? I like those days.
I was only joking about the
time.
guys at work. I just don't like superhero films. It was just a little comment to pop the boys. My understanding before we sign off
I hate Marvel.
is that in Guardians of the Galaxy, does Batista play an alien who takes everything very literally?
Yes.
So he's basically Suburban Commando, but a million times better. Right, okay,
yes.
screw you, Hulk Hogan, you mad old racist, terrible actor.
Let us know your best and worst wrestling movie moments in the comment section below, or you can tweet
I
them
loved
at
him
us.
as a kid.
You can tweet them at us on Twitter at
In a way.
WhatCultureWW. You can follow us all on Twitter. In fact, you can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael
You can
Hamflett.
follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. As I said, you can follow us all at WhatCultureWW. Make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify. My thanks to the Dudley Boys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.
I loved Hulk Hogan as a kid.